proportions are really nothing more than two ratios being set equal to each other. So we could say that we have the ratio A over B equals C over D. So any two fractions set equal to each other we say are proportional. Now, we can use proportional reasoning to solve problems. The key is consistency, and you will see how I set up all of these problems to keep consistency. To solve proportions, we do what's called cross multiply. So we would say B times C equals A times D. So we cross multiply the top of one fraction times the bottom of the other fraction equals the bottom of the other fraction times the top of the other. And we will do enough of these that hopefully you become very familiar and very comfortable. So let's do some story problems with proportions. Now, first, we just want to read the problem. On your map, the distance between Evansville and Muncie is 8.75 inches. How many miles is it from Evansville to Muncie? If it is 4.5 inches between Lafayette and Fort Wayne on the map and 120 miles from Lafayette and Fort Wayne in real life. Now, sometimes there's a lot of information. You're like, wow, I'm not really sure how to set that up. Well, what are we talking about here? We're talking about distance from two different spots, right? We've got Evansville to Muncie, and we've got Fort Wayne and Lafayette. So I can use that, right, each one of those. So everything on the left, on this side is all about Evansville and Muncie. On this side is all Fort Wayne and Lafayette. So I will use those. Now, they also talk about being on a map, and they talk about inches, and they talk about miles. So everything in this top part, both sides, is going to be about inches, while everything in the bottom part is going to be about miles. So I give myself some spots here to work. So first it says Evansville, Muncie, 8.75 inches. Well, Evansville, Muncie, inches. That spot goes here. So 8.75. Then it says, how many miles is it from Evansville to Muncie? Well, I don't know. So I'm going to use an unknown X for the miles from Evansville to Muncie. Then I go, it's 4.5 inches between Lafayette and Fort Wayne. Okay, it's inches, so that goes on top. And then it's 120 miles from Lafayette to Fort Wayne, that goes on the bottom. And now we have ourselves what we call a proportion. So we do our cross multiplying. X times 4.5 is 4.5x. 120 times 8.75 gives me 1,050. I'm just multiplying here. Now I have to solve for x. Well, the equal sign splits this into two equal parts. In order to get x by itself, because we have 4.5 times x, we are going to divide by the number we want to move. Sometimes you'll hear this as cross multiply and divide. This is why, because you have to divide by that number in front of x. So 4.5 over 4.5 is just 1, and I'm left with x equals, and then 1050 divided by 4.5 leaves me with 233.33. I rounded, and that is miles. So it's approximately 233.33 miles from Evansville to Muncie. Number 2. A house assessed at $73,000 has an annual property tax of $1,600. Okay, so on the top we're going to talk about house value. On the bottom we're going to talk about taxes. So we can come up with a ratio of $73,000 to $1,600. That's a ratio of the assessed price to the taxes. Then it says, how much property tax? Well, property tax goes on the bottom. Would the owner of a house in the same neighborhood expect to pay if his house was assessed, right, that's the house price, at $87,500. Now, if you just look at this, look at your numerators, $73,000 to $87,500. The numerators get bigger, which means your taxes should also get bigger. So you should expect an answer that is bigger than $1,600. Okay, so we cross multiply. 73,000x is 73,000x equals, I'm going to go the other way now, 1,600 times 87,500, and we get large number. Right? Big number, 7 zeros. So, to get x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 73,000. And generally, I don't even ever clear my calculator. That way I never have to think about how many zeros. It's just already in there. So when I divide by 73,000, I get x by itself because these would reduce to 1. So x equals $1,917.81. And that makes sense because it should be a little bit bigger than 1,600, and it is. Number 3, a couple ordered 70 ounces of pate for their engagement party of 45 people. The pate was such a hit, the couple has decided to serve it again at their wedding reception. How many ounces of pate should they order for 315 people? Okay, we are comparing ounces to people, and we're talking about the engagement versus the wedding, right? These are my spots if you want to label. I get distracted very easily, so I like to label. Okay, so we see, we're talking about the engagement first, 70 ounces, that goes on the top. 45 people at the engagement, so that goes on the bottom. The wedding, they're inviting 315 people. Well, people goes on the bottom at the wedding. We don't know how many ounces, that's the question. So when I go to solve this, again, cross multiply. So 45x equals 315 times 70 gives me 22,050. Divide both sides by 45. Those cancel out. I'm left with x equals 490 ounces. And these are story problems, so you do want to make sure that you have a label. What are you talking about in each of these problems? Number 4, if 1 acre of land has 30,000 plants of corn, how many plants would grow in a 17-acre farm? Okay, so we're talking about acres compared to corn. Okay, so they first give me 1 acre is 30,000 corns. So 17 acres is how many corns? All right, well, if I cross multiply, 1x is just 1x. So the nice part about this is that when I take 30,000 times 17, I get 510,000 plants of corn. So you think about it, if this has a 1x in front of it, if you divide by 1, what does that do to your problem? Nothing. So you simply just have 510,000 plants of corn on that 17-acre farm. Number 5, Larry is creating a mural from a photograph he took. For every 0.5 on the photo, it's 4 inches on the mural. So we're looking at photo compared to the mural. Okay, so first I'm going to start with, it said photo to 4. So on the photo is 0.5, to the mural is 4. Okay, what else are they giving me? Well, they said if the photograph is cropped to be 7 inches wide, that's the photo, so that goes on top. What's going to be on the bottom? So I will have 0.5x equals 28. Divide both sides by 0.5, and x equals 56 inches. So our mural will be 56 inches wide. Amy's taking 15 credit hours at Ivy Tech and paid some monies. So we are comparing credit hours to money. 15 of them to $1,997.25. She wants to take 11 credit hours this summer. How much will that cost her? So we're trying to figure out the price in terms of proportionality. So 15x equals $1,997.25 times 11 gives me $21,969.75. Divide both sides by 15 to get this part to go away, and I would just have $1,464.65. And that makes sense. Less credit hours, less money. Don't let common sense leave you, because that is still a big part of proportions. Well, and math. And the last one for this video, a 30-pound child received 525 milligrams. Okay, so we are comparing pounds to milligrams, and it first gives me 35 pounds to 525 milligrams. If the dosages remain proportional to the body weight, how many milligrams? So that's going to go down here for a kid that weighs 68 pounds. All right, so I cross multiply. 35x equals 35,700. Divide both sides by 35, and x equals 1,020 milligrams. Which makes sense. 35 to 68 is almost double. 525 to 1020 is almost double. So that does make sense. So use logic when playing with proportions.